Greetings. Today I will talk about Pedro Menéndez de Aviles and the founding of St. Augustine. The story of the founding of St. Augustine, Florida began with a disastrous French settlement on Paris Island in 1562 in North Carolina and ends with the destruction of the French Fort Caroline in Florida 3 years later. Before getting started, I would encourage you to subscribe to the Mossy Feet Books YouTube channel for more great content. I will also entreat you to visit my website, www.mossyfeetbooks.com, where you'll find sample chapters, podcasts, a slew of content, and links to where you can buy my books. While visiting the website, you can subscribe to it and receive email notification of when I publish a new book or other content like this video and podcast. You can also subscribe to This episode is based on my book, Colonial American History Stories, 1215 through 1664. It is the first book in my 6-book Timeline of United States History series. You can find my books locally at the Walnut Street Variety Shop in Batesville, Indiana. Ribot was a member of a religious sect called Huguenots. The members of this sect followed the teachings of theologian John Calvin. As Protestants, they faced persecution by the Catholic majority of France. Ribot and his men were searching for a place where they could worship in peace. He also served as an officer in the French Navy and served under the command of Admiral Gaspard de Coligny. Coligny sent Ribot on a secret mission to find a settlement for the Huguenots in the New World. Their first destination was the current Jacksonville, Florida area. After nosing around a bit, the expedition sailed north and reached Paris Island in current North Carolina. French explorer Ribot explored the area around Paris Island and in North Carolina. He decided to establish a small settlement on the island. He left 28 men and sailed back to France to acquire supplies for the colonists on June the 11th, 1562. Here, upon Ribot's return to France, he found that a religious war between the Huguenots and the Catholics had erupted. Ribot fled to England, where he lobbied Queen Elizabeth I to fund a return voyage. Instead of funding a voyage, she had him arrested as a spy and imprisoned in the Tower of London. The men left at Paris Island suffered terribly, as a fire destroyed most of their supplies. The men mutinied against the leader and murdered him. About a year later, with dwindling supplies and hostile natives all around them, they elected to escape. They built a boat and set sail back to France. Most of the men died during the voyage, some from the cannibalism that arose out of desperation. Some did manage to get back to the European coast, where an English ship rescued them. A man named René Goulon de Laudonnière had been Ribot's second in command. After Ribot's imprisonment, French King Charles IX bestowed funds for him to sail to Florida and establish a colony. The expedition sailed from France and landed at the mouth of the St. Johns River. They sailed up the river until they found a suitable spot where they built a fort, establishing Fort Caroline on January the 22nd, 1564. The Spanish now had a rival in Florida. Spanish Admiral Pedro Menéndez de Aviles sailed from Spain with 1,500 settlers to counter the French incursion in their territory. They landed at Matanzas Bay, where they established St. Augustine on September the 8th, 1565. Thus began the oldest continuously occupied European city in the United States. Aviles' mission was to build a fort quickly, and as soon as it was stable, he was to attack the French settlement at Fort Caroline. While the situation at Fort Caroline was perilous, supplies were short and some of the men had mutinied. The commander was preparing to abandon the settlement when Ribot, who had been released, came with supplies and more men. He began preparing for the expected French assault. Ribot had departed Fort Caroline to attack it. St. Augustine. By now, Aviles was finally in a position to attack the French, and on September the 16th, 1565, he departed the fort with 500 men. A severe storm blew up, bringing heavy rains and high winds with it. His troops struggled across the landscape in the rain and reached Fort Caroline on September the 19th. The storm had also buffeted Renault's fleet, which began a return to Fort Caroline. Inside the fort, The French had no idea that a Spanish force lay in wait in the dark forest. The commander did not think a land assault was possible due to the heavy winds and rain. He went to bed, then got up and sent the sentries, who were wet and miserable, to bed. At dawn, the Spanish struck. The garrison, caught by surprise, and many still in their night clothes or half naked, rose to defend themselves. However, outnumbered and unprepared, they stood little chance as the Spanish swept into the fort, killing as they proceeded. About 130 of the French managed to escape and were later rescued by Ribault. The Spanish discovered them and captured them. They gave them, the Huguenots, the choice, the chance of converting to Catholicism or dying. Most did not convert, and Vies had them knifed to death. The next episode will cover Sir Humphrey Gilbert's ill-fated attempt to settle Newfoundland. The articles on the book contain much more detail about the topics discussed. Additionally, there are other topics not included in the podcast. I encourage you to subscribe to both my website, www.mossyfeetbooks.com, and this YouTube channel. I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and thank you for listening.